Guess what day it is? And guess what's happening outside? It is the Rainy Sunday comic book show, guys. Rainy Sundays were those times that when I was a kid, couldn't go outside. So I'd get a stack of books, crawl up on the bed, listen to the rain hitting the roof, and would read some comics on a nice, cozy little bed. For you guys that want to know what kind of bed it was a bunk bed. So usually I'll climb on top. And of course, if you haven't heard the news, George Perez has passed. Today is 5/8, 2022, Mother's Day for many of us. I think almost everybody's had a mother, especially if you're on this earth walking around. So make sure you say Happy Mother's Day to those mothers out there. But last night we had a fantastic live stream last night, completely spontaneous. Uh, Threw out a link to quite a few people, other YouTubers, and told them invite whoever you wanted. And as the show progressed, and right when I was like ready to end it, we had more and more people show up. Turned out to be a fantastic show, in my opinion. Just reminiscing about George Perez through his art, through his work. I was a little bit emotional. I didn't like break down or anything, but you know, I've been preparing myself ever since the news hit that George would be passing. So check out last night's stream. I think it was fantastic, one of the better ones, just because of completely because of George Perez. So we'll check that out. Now I'm sitting here in front of you guys, and I've got a massive haul here. Some good books, some filler issues, some things that you may or may not be interested in. But I've really been thinking a whole lot about YouTube and what I'm doing here. That's right. Thanks, Creature. Creature's out there. What's up, man? And I reached a point where, like, I've watched literally thousands of haul videos over the last, I don't know, 12 years, 11 or 12 years. And I used to have things to say, things that bounced around in my head while I was driving about comics and stuff. And recently, I've really had to think. What got me thinking about this is that somebody pointed out that it's not that I'm a hobbyist. I'm convinced they've been roaming around YouTube or saw a meme, or I'm not saying it wasn't completely their idea, but I think they ran across something and they thought of me. Is what I'm trying to get at. But it's not that I'm a hobbyist. It's not so much I'm just a collector, because I'm both of those. Have many other hobbies, but when it comes to the comics, I'm more of an analyst. Okay, I like the history behind the history. I like connecting things. I like seeing a big picture over the history of a character, what was going on outside of comics at the time during the era that those books came out, what was going on with creators that may have been reflected in the story. I've talked about there's three ways to read a story: the work itself, which is important, what was going on with the author, the creator, when they were doing the story, so that you can get a historical reference of the story saying more, and what was going on with the author, and what was going on with history. I think you get it. There's three ways. I've said all this before. And there's things I've delved into where there's been things that were cookie cutter made for me because they were complex, full of comic book history and things that you may not have known before, where they connected things that you didn't know were connected before. And that one great example is Grant Morrison's Final Crisis. And I want to talk about Grant Morrison here real quick and stuff. But I used to have like I said, for 20, 30 years, I had stuff bouncing around in my head about comics and stuff that you can't really share with other people over the years. Number one, there was no internet. Number two, the stigma of comics still existed. And it was in my situation where I was living and things, it was far and few between before I really got around a bunch of comic book collectors, or I ended up at a comic book shop, or I was getting old enough to make it to cons when I had the money and stuff. And all of a sudden it was Shangri-La. People that spoke the language. We all had the same language from reading these comics and everything. So I had a lot to say for a long time. And the ironic thing is that the equipment I had, potato cameras, straight laptop computer camera and microphone. I had more interesting things to say, but the execution of the videos, even though I was able to play around with some editing back then, just to play around and stuff like that, little intros and have fun in a community to bounce ideas off and stuff. But bad quality videos and audio, better things to say, and I'm a little bit better now. And it's not, I've sort of, I don't know if I got everything off of my chest and had, said what I wanted to say. And then also with the atmosphere, it reached the point that you couldn't analytically come in and talk about things that were going in comics. And I fell into the trapping. It's one thing to say something sucks. It's another thing to not explain why it sucks. And a lot of people weren't receptive. They weren't interested, and that's fine. Oh man, thanks, John. John watched it he said the show last night was great, right? So if I'm going to keep doing this YouTube thing, it can't just be haul after haul, comic book after comic book, and not talking about things. We've reached a point where we've got to be adults and expand a little bit and see if anybody's interested, because these are the kind of things that go through my head. So what kind of brought this up is not only an article about Grant Morrison I'm going to show you in a minute. I'll get to the haul in a minute, but the title of this show may change, and I may take what I'm saying now and expand on it in a proper video. I haven't made a proper video probably since the fall of last year and stuff, right? But anyway, what brought it up is we're going to take a book like The Crow. The Crow, to me, is one of those rarities where I cannot consider this a book or a graphic novel. This is a work of art. There's so many things that make this interesting. First of all, I wouldn't say it was a labor of love. It was cathartic for James O'Barr. We all know the story that if you read this book, he finally tells the story proper of his fiancée and how she was killed and the guilt that he had and everything. And that over a journey of probably like 30 years or something like that, he learned to forgive himself. But through The Crow, what the man did is in the late 70s, his girlfriend was hit by a drunk driver. He had guilt because he feels like he should have went and got her. And I think she was doing an errand for him, and then they were going to be married. He came from foster care and stuff. So this was the first time he probably truly felt real love, if I had to guess. Being a social worker, those situations can be complex. I've got a little insight. So anyway, but what he did is that he would work at a body shop, go home and work on this book over years. Okay, probably took him a decade to get this thing completed, and he saw his art improve. And what he did is he immersed himself in music, Joy Division, The Cure, 80s alternative scene. He based the body of Eric Draven, the Crow, on Iggy Pop. All right, the pop culture of the time, the alternative scene at the time, if you will. And he's taken things in here like poetry and used them to enhance the story. The Raymond Chandler Evening actually made me jump when he kicked the door when he got to the last line of the poem. He's taken a song by Joy Division and a song by The Cure, the Hanging Garden, and he's put them in here just with the lyrics, and you see that they're really poetry. So he's done a unique way of world building through all sorts of arts, if you will. Okay. And he has symbolism in here. Eric Draven dreams of being on a train, and he looks out the window and he sees this beautiful white stag running with the train out in a field. And then all of a sudden the crow pops up and warns him to look away. And the beautiful white stag is now wrapped in barbed wire and is suffering. And he reveals that he puts in new pages in the special edition, if you will, that and he explains and expands on that guilt and what happens with it. So that's what makes it interesting. Now, this was a book that came out, I think the first issue might have been late 80s, excuse me, and then it hit proper in the 90s. So it actually was a little bit ahead of its time for when he was working on the book. But then we have things like this, and I wanted to share this. Okay. And prepare yourself, because it's going to be a different take than you've seen on the other YouTube channels. All right. I'm not out to do a stunt to get views and things like that. Not saying that's what those guys are doing. They're just more into it than I am. So give me my share. There we go. But this is kind of what. See if it's going to come up. Uh-oh. Have they done something to the site? Let's try this again. But this is the kind of thing that you know, this is the kind of thing that they kind of find, or that people are finding interesting now. Let me get rid of some of this. Okay. But people want to worry about labels. Grant Morrison has done a few things on Reddit or some sites, and they're wanting to talk about the labels of sexuality, uh, about Hal Jordan and Captain Kirk being what they call pansexual. And this is just kind of ridiculous because they try to defend it and go through it, and they call other YouTubers uh, pearl clutchers and stuff, and it's got a bit of a nasty tone. And they go through trying to say that he has a history. Grant Morrison saying it's all there, it's all there. Um, and I'm a huge Grant Morrison fan, so let's get that straight. But is this real? Romancing xenomorph since the Beatles. That's what makes him pansexual. So now they're trying to argue on fictional characters. You're welcome to go to Bleeding Cool and look that up. But this is what they want to talk about in comics. Now, I sat there and I went through the layers of The Crow and all the things that made it interesting. And it's a classic, and I think it is above comics, to be honest with you, just because of the quality, the pain of the heart, and everything that's in there. It really stands on its own, and it works all three ways. It works the work of when this book came out, not when the book came out. Yeah, when the book came out and when the movie hit and people were reading the book, they didn't know about the history of James O'Barr. They didn't know about the influence of 80s alternative, but the work stood on its own, and the work improved, and you watch its art get better and more dynamic, and its skills and techniques and art were amazing. Then you're reading these poems and looking up these songs. This is pre-internet, so you know, and a lot of people didn't do it. So it works on all three levels. It works as the work on its own, it stands. It works with knowing what was going on with the author while he was doing it. And it also works with the era, knowing the history of the era, specifically the alternative music scene. And it all enhances the story. Now it seems like a lot of comics for quite a while, I have the words now, want to take one subject and act like that is enough merit that everybody should love this, what they're doing. And if you don't love it, they want to be, it's a very, the problem with this is whether you admit it or not. The reality is a lot of these subjects that they're touching on are meant to be divisive. It is meant to make an enemy or emotionally shame people or to do a lot of things. So when somebody comes up and they have a counter argument about why this is ridiculous, because first of all, it's made up. Okay, okay. You can describe what people are attracted to. You can describe what you are attracted to, but you're really putting yourself in a corner and compartmentalizing and making up things to make it interesting. And believe it or not, despite watching TV and if you're immersed in YouTube and stuff like that, the general population, and as somebody who does quite a bit of traveling and works with people every day, nobody really cares. They may be aware of it or they have no idea. Even in my office, I've had to explain a few things, and we've had one other person come in because they were fresh out of college and 22, come in and we could discuss these things and I could have these conversations and nobody would blow up like a 4-year-old and nobody would try to threaten to cancel me. I have been dealing with this stuff since 2015 or 16 because, believe it or not, my channel was actually popular there for a while. And it is actually things like this that were coming up that you couldn't talk about, in horrible things were being said about me that I just sort of kind of backed off. It wasn't out of fear or anything like that. It's or fear or anything, because it's just not worth wasting time. So how can I find something to say with a lot of the modern stuff that's coming on when this is what they find interesting and I want to analytically take apart things and show. And I think this reflects with a lot of people, even if it isn't from the same place that I'm coming from, with the massive amounts of back issue hauls and stuff people are getting. And I mean, you have channels dedicated to top 10 books that are reactionary in most part to upcoming Disney TV shows, in movies, and things, and people really backing up. Apps where people are now selling apps where you can just find the keys in a book with a click of a button while you're digging through your boxes and stuff. So the collecting of the hobby is different for a current generation, and this is why I'm really glad that I'm Generation X. I grew up with the music. I saw the rise and fall of the arcades. I shot pool. You know, I got to see before Star Wars and after Star Wars pertaining to the world and pop culture. A lot of people consider it a golden age, and now we have the generation before me and one or two generations after me that really seem to do have a lot of manufactured drama that they're stuck on, and these are the things that they find interesting. It's very soap opera-ish, very sophomoric, very derivative, and to me, it really does feel like an adolescent stunted concept, almost an arrested development with a lot of the stuff. Now, these are observations. There's nothing I'm saying here that is negative, but these conversations and these reactions and the things that have been going on so online is that if you say anything like this, you must be a bigot. Last night, I told the story that I've been putting together in my head of when I read Crisis on Infinite Earths number 11 when it came out. Real quick on the story, to repeat from last night, and this is what's great about being Generation X. We were all just thrown out there together in the world. We had a lot of freedom. You ran across a lot of people, and you ended up realizing there's an understanding that we're all in this together, even if we're not friends. All walks of life, all people, everything, the way things were manufactured, you were just thrown out there and we were all together, and you bond going over the same crap. Even if you don't end up being great friends, you went through the same crap. So all walks of life, all races, all sexualities, even though in high school I was the guy that people would come out to, even if they didn't come out properly, that was their decisions, their dealings with. And we went through the same crap. So a lot of the stuff that's dealing with, we just really, I wouldn't say are indifferent or didn't care. It's just, it was there. We knew it was there. And it was like, okay, you told me, now can we go do this? And nothing changed when you found out. It's the great thing, I think, about growing up. And now it's like they try to act like the 80s didn't exist, and the early 90s didn't exist. And that's why they don't like hearing about that time, because it was, even though to a certain extent we knew we were having a good time, but we were still looking forward to the future, think it's just going to get better. But anyway, I was like 10 years old, and this grandmother and my mother were driving around, and I just gotten a GI Joe toy, the His Tank. I remember being in the back seat and I'm putting the stickers on it and I'm looking at it and everything, and they're talking about this older gentleman that had and he was older, probably, I want to say he was like 60 or 70, but the way people aged back then compared to now, he's probably just in his 50s. He had fell off a ladder working on his house and was in the hospital, and rumors were running rampant about how bad he was hurt, and they were like laughing about it and everything. And then I heard them talking about him being gay or something, and I don't know why I did it, but I'm glad I did it, but I didn't know it was going to come out of me. But out of my mouth came, that is a human being you're talking about with feelings, and I nailed him. So a year later, Halloween hits. Crisis on Infinite Earth had been going on, and on Halloween, I made it to a store to get Crisis number 11. You didn't know how it was going to end. I was hooked. Nothing in comics had been done like this. You had to wait a month. I was reading each issue of Crisis, good gosh, maybe 3, 5, 10 times, whatever, over and over, loving it. This was my thing. So I had issue number 11, and my mom was telling me that I need to get dressed, make my costume, because I'm going out with the girl across the street. And I couldn't figure out why I would be so young. I was like, what was this? We never went out. We never did anything like that. And all of a sudden I'm being told I'm going out taking this girl out for Halloween and stuff, right? And the only thing I really remember is that we ended up at McDonald's to eat. McDonald's is packed. I've had enough. I'm reading my comic, and my mom elbows me. And she's like, Tim, and she motions to the girl. And I'm like, I'm reading my comic. Like, and what I meant is that I'm reading this comic now. Let me finish it, and then we'll socialize or whatever, right? But I wanted to read my freaking book. That was my whole goal for the day. I've been waiting a couple of months, weeks ago. I was telling the story, and then it dawned on me. Um, they were worried about. My mother actually told me a couple years ago, and I put it together the story that they were just relieved when they saw me dating girls, because they were worried about me being gay. And I really wanted to have the conversation about, well, what would happen if I was gay, but we didn't go there. It'd been since 1985. It'd been over 30 years. What was the problem and stuff, right? That's Gen X. Okay. It's not a big deal. Okay. So, it's not an indifference. It's not being blind. It's that, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you are what you are, whatever. So when it comes to the entertainment field and reading comics and talking about these things and wanting to do this, the back issues and the history, it's like what I used to say about Marvel. Marvel's biggest enemy isn't the scary white male or anything or whatever they wanted to say. It was the old men that they tried to push aside. It's its own history and it's all its back issues. These things are in print. You can actually buy these things and get recommended books and go back and read them and make the comparison. And they're going to win out if you are really unbiased. Everything that makes them interesting, the world building, the poetry, the symbolism, the art, the cathartic process that they put in through these characters and make them living and breathing. The quiet moments where we see Eric Draven remembering Shelley and he's dancing, thinking about her. And then in the special edition, we get the new pages where he talks about that he promises Shelley he'll learn how to dance so they can dance at their wedding. And now 20 some years later, you're finding out he's dancing with the corpse of a skeleton in a wedding dress because he promised her. It's fantastic stuff. And then we want to argue about a label to try to put on Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison wants to put on Hal Jordan. That's how interested I am, man. I have to dig for it and stuff, right? It's very uninteresting. Now, it'd be great conversational topics if you're a comic book collector and you want to talk about the history of Hal Jordan and his relationships and things and like that. But you got to be receptive that the other person's it's got to be a give and take in a real conversation. So just to put it into context, as a Grant Morrison fan, and something where I don't think there's anything wrong with that conversation, but when that is the only subject that you want to bring up to get clicks and hits and attention and things, and you think this is enough to make a character interesting. Grant Morrison also kind of popped a Killing Joke back around 2014-ish. I've got a video on it and stuff where he interpreted the Killing Joke as Batman actually killed the Joker towards the last page of the book, which tells me, again, great conversational piece, great interpretation, but with a track record that's building up on Grant. Grant will see what he wants to see in a lot of these books. And I have no problem with his interpretations. I think they're fascinating to see a book that I read many, many, many times and get fresh eyes on it. I get juiced up when I see younger YouTubers or younger comic book collectors get excited over reading Watchmen for the first time, even though they may not get it sometimes. I get juiced up when people find older comics and stuff and they're just excited like it's brand new to them. I love that. And then you get to hear their take on it. I watch reactionary videos of people listening to songs for the first time, like Led Zeppelin and things. And I saw one video that really hooked me into this genre because they'd been listening to Pink Floyd for a while. They'd never really listened to Pink Floyd. Now they're into it. This is probably like their 5th or 6th video over a course of a year of another Pink Floyd song. And the girl came up perfectly. I've been listening to Pink Floyd at least since 1980 that I realized with The Wall. Okay. Even as a young kid, I could hold up my vinyl. I could go get the movies anyway, but, The Wall by they were, they were listening to Comfortably Numb. I think that was the one. And the girl came up with the perfect description of Pink Floyd, of the words I've been searching for probably since I was 7. Is that Pink Floyd will paint a movie in your mind. I was like, she gets it. That's amazing. Comic books can do the same thing. And I think there's just so much more that should make a comic book interesting than what they like to sleep with. That's part of a character, not the total, complete identity. And that's really all I have to say. Yes. Got that off my chest, right? I'm gonna check the comments. We'll get to the hall. All right. Morning. Oh, okay. Thanks. I don't know how far I've been here. Okay, man. We got a lot of people here. We're gonna get to the hall, man. And like I said, I may even take a snippet of this and make it into a video or something. I don't know. I'm not gonna have a computer for a few days. The wife needs it for her trainings the next week. John is out here. Great day to read comics. I'm going to be reading some this afternoon. Creature, what's up, brother? George Perez was a giant. Who else is out there? Victor Thomas is here. Good morning. The culture is absolutely insane. Opinion has been outlawed. It honestly makes me sad. Well, I think we can be examples by having them learn from us, not by how we act, but how we react. And I think I had to remind myself of that. If I want to keep doing this, good morning. If I want to keep doing this, I got to decide if I have something to say or not, or I'm just wasting your time and mine. Manufactured drama is the perfect way to describe that. It is. It definitely is. I'm totally fine with that. Well said. Well, thank you guys. We have Kratu here. Yesterday morning, the great Gore Vidal is here. Yesterday morning, I reread the first 8 issues of Sandman. Today, a friend of mine is listening to Game of Speak in Austin. This morning, reading Claremont Leonardo's New Mutant stories. Now you got me thinking of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol is fantastic. I actually just had an online conversation where I referred to Grant. I didn't say this was Grant Morrison's run on that book. I said that was Grant Morrison's book. I think he's done many great things, many very cool things, but I don't think we've ever really topped the Animal Man and Doom Patrol runs. I feel like those are unfiltered, honest Grant Morrison. Even though he's got great works, and that's subjective. Again, that's one of the things we could have a conversation about. I had plans to go back and read Crisis Mini series today. Yeah, absolutely. Remember Judy, the Sandman passenger story, wearing a Joy Division jacket? Yeah, absolutely, man. You had Foxglove. Yeah, I could go down the well talking about a lot of this stuff. Joy Division meant a lot of things to people. Scott Connor's there. What's up, brother? You missed a great show last night. All right, so now we got that out of the way. I actually may download that first part of this video and stick it out there, man. So anyway, what happened was in my travels, I don't even remember if I did a Gmart haul. I've been on the road so much for work and everything like that. But I got some books in Gmart. I'm going to go back and see if I showed what I bought, but kind of could wait. So basically, I had a double-edged sword this week. All right, so back up in Northern Virginia, I've had to add an extra day to my travels to fit in everything that work has me doing, which means I sort of some places I had a little bit more time, other places I didn't. And I've talked about finding the indoor flea market that I found out that I was a quarter of a mile away for months and months and never knew it was there. I thought it was years, but they made me feel better when they told me when they actually opened. And of course, they had the guy with the section where if you bought 20 comics, the price dropped from $1 to 50 cents. So I'd already sort of went through those books, and some other people had been through those books since I was there last time. And I'm like, we'll just do it. We'll just go with it. And I might have spent a little bit more money, but now I don't have to go back. You follow what I'm saying? So I ended up picking up some stuff. It was filler issues. I'm not saying it wasn't anything great. It's just some of the stuff I'll show you is I needed an issue here, an issue there. This looked interesting. I got this cover. I didn't think I was going to see anything. The next day, I ended up a couple miles above Richmond. And the meeting goes long because the people didn't show up. They were a little bit late. I had to stand under a tree, all this stuff. And I decided to do a little Google search, and I found 3 or 4 shops, and I picked one. And I decided to go after everything was over with. And I'm not exaggerating. I said this on the Graphic Man channel Wednesday night because that was the day I'd went. I was in a hotel room on that show, the Fossils. And no joke, as I was walking up to the store, they had the name of the store, and then they had underneath the name established 1980. When I saw that, I seriously felt like my bottom lip was quivering like a scared chihuahua. And as I'm even thinking about it, I got a little bit clamped. I felt like there was like a phantom tear ready to drop and stuff because I was like, this is going to be good. All right. The older the comic book shop, the better chances of back issues that have probably been sitting there since the 80s and stuff. And they did not fail. They did not fail to meet my expectations and stuff. I walked in, the store wasn't huge, but it was well organized. Stacks, little shelves that came up to about your mid chest, 3 layers of comics, actually separated in alphabetical order by First Comics, Kamiko Comics, Epic Comics, PC Comics. Of course, Marvel and DC were all on top. And it was just glorious to go through and see these alternative comics and stuff that I couldn't get a hold of when I was a kid. So here's the double-edged sword part. I really wished I had not spent money the day before. I wished I knew I was going to be here. So I had to hit a budget. Okay, so it was fantastic. So I'll show you a few things I got at the store, and then we'll get to the flea market stuff, right? So apparently a couple years ago, I think it was the 25th anniversary. Oh, by the way, here's the name of the store, Stories Comics. But anyway, they had a little, not so much a dollar bin, but they had a bin where books were 50 cents, 75 cents, 95 cents, something like that. So I just kept a few things, but I think this was the 25th anniversary of Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross Marvels, where they kind of spent 4 issues retelling the first, 10 years of, from the debut of the from even going back. Anyway, the history of the Marvel Universe chronologically, from whenever they decided to begin, probably with the appearance of the Human Torch in 1938, 36, whatever it was, all the way up until the death of Gwen Stacy, So anyway, this is the first issue. They apparently re-released the each issue, and they annotated them. So I looked at this and opened it up, and I have all of this in a Wizard special about Alex Ross, where they went through all of his works and interviewed him and everything, probably around the year 2000. I think it was a Millennium special. And also I had the Wizard magazines where they annotated Marvels and Kingdom Come. So they just took all of that and stuck it in here. It was pretty good for 95 cents. I just had to know. So that was kind of cool to find. Issue 6 for 95 cents of Brightest Day. Apparently, back in like 2010 or something like that, I found all the Brightest Day books for $0.25 a piece. I think there was 24 of them as a bi-weekly book. They didn't try to do the weekly book, I think, like they did 52. So for years, I thought I had every issue plus variant copies and stuff. And I'm not going to say that Brightest Day was the greatest thing, but it was an interesting read. And it turns out I didn't have number 6 forever. I have no idea. I don't know if I had number 6 and lost it, but yeah, for 10 years, I thought I had a complete set. So I was lucky to find that. The only issue of Brightest Day they had in there. They had this, not worth a lot of money, but very hard to find for some reason. But in the mid-90s at Vertigo, for a summer event, they took all their Vertigo books that had children in them, and they did this really loose crossover. Neil Gaiman wrote the Children's Crusade #1 as a bookend. The annuals all came out, and then Children's Crusade #2 to tie it all up. And they had Animal Man's daughter in the Animal Man annual. They had Dorothy, I think, and in the Doom Patrol annual, and so on and so forth, if you're into those books. And Books of Magic was out, but they didn't or maybe it hadn't come out yet as a series, but they decided to throw Timothy Hunter in there, and it was Arcana, the Books of Magic. And this one was this is the one you just couldn't find, so I couldn't believe I found it. Now, these are both books that are supposed to be worth $40, my friend. And I can't believe these are the books like I'll never find those because I didn't really understand why they were worth money or anything like that. But I found these, right? I found them, and I have a feeling these have been there since the '80s in their section. But this is DC Comics Presents Superman and Metamorpho, and it had a backup tale of whatever happened to the original Airwalker. And this is apparently a key book for reasons I don't understand. Right? It's Superman and Metamorpho, 1982 ish, 81. But what really gets me is when I get these old comics, I love everything about them. I love the smell, first of all, the cover, opening it up to that splash page, looking at the advertisements, looking at what comic book catalogs are in there, looking at what X-ray specs are being sold for at the time, things like that. And then we have the letters page, and I will skim those. And if a letter, I don't read every letter, but if one looks interesting, I'll slow down. So what's amazing about this? Okay, so this book came out. This is worth, I think this will be worth hearing. This is 1981. And the very first letter here, come on, this better focus, is by one Todd McFarlane of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So yeah, DC Comics Presents number 40 has a letter from one Todd McFarlane in 1982. And now that we know that he got into comics and stuff, he's one of those few geniuses back in the day who figured out to get a relationship with an editor so you have a contact person when you want to start to try to get into comics. 1982, Todd McFarlane was working it. Is that not cool? And then we have The Green Lantern 141, a book that was always in my collection and just one day wasn't there. I don't know what happened. And of course, you would know that it's the first appearance of the Omega Men. I got this for $6. And again, I think it's like a $40 book. And I'm pretty sure this has probably been in their bins for quite a while because I did some research at the hotel room about the store. If I'm right, they had two other stores that had shut down over the years. And I think they had a lot of stuff in storage and it came out. Where those two other stores over the years had shut down. So, you know, I just don't understand how this could have been there with the run that they had. So yeah, I ended up getting the first appearance of Omega Man for $6. I didn't really haggle too much or even try. They had a great Kamiko section, and make sure all those are together. I hope they're here. Well, anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you I looked at, no, they didn't have it, but they had a Johnny Quest. But I'm a huge Bill Willingham Elementals fan, and I found all 3 issues of the Fathom and Member of the Elementals miniseries. They had a little bit of a spin-off with a Morning Star special. Fathom got her miniseries. Bill Willingham wrote and drew this, I believe. And no, he didn't. I thought he did. It's the Morning Star special he did. So anyway, what I think is really cool about this is apparently there's an adventure underground, and the race of people she finds underwater. I thought I was looking at the sea monkeys. If you saw that Joe Orlando advertisement when you were a kid for sea monkeys, I was like, I'm like, he's not fooling me. Those are supposed to be the sea monkeys proper, you know. I got the number 15, volume 1 of Mage. And if you guys were like into role playing, or if you were able to get Amazing Heroes or comic magazines or see some advertisements, I don't know where I first saw the cover, this image of issue 15, double-sized issue of Mage by Matt Wagner. But this to me, this is one of those moments where I felt like this was a staple of what an 80s alternative comic was with this cover. You know, that neon green, that slightly sloppy artwork to a certain extent, that was so much different than the refined looks of like, you know, the George Perez's and things like that, the John Burns, something raw about it. And the guy's, you know, got a beard. He's unpolished. He looks like somebody you would sit down and play D&D with back in the day. And he's holding a bat that's glowing in the dark, just like you know it, you know. So I had my choice of several cop issues of the first Mage book, and I went with this one just because I wanted to read this as soon as I saw it when I was a kid, and it never came to fruition. So yeah, a Mage. And then I was very happy because I'm probably done with my Swamp Thing collection finally. I have many things Swamp Thing, but I think the big two that I'm definitely going to be keeping is anything with Bernie Wrightson. Don't get me wrong. The pre Alan Moore issues with the artwork of Rich Veitch or Stephen Bissett or Toddlebum. You know that if you're in the Swamp Thing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I was missing all the key issues of Rick Veitch's run, which was fantastic. He got took off of, and a few key issues after that. So the Nancy Collins stuff, the Mark Miller, Grant Morrison run, the odds and ends, I'm probably going to be getting rid of for space. I've had those for years. I've barely glanced over them, tried to read them. People love the Nancy Collins run, from what I understand, and they were very happy when she got her omnibus of her runs and stuff like that. But it's never grabbed me, so I'm probably going to be keeping the Alan Moore, Rick Veitch, probably up to issue 100, getting rid of anything after that, right? But anyway, the first appearance of, is it Teffy? His daughter. The Hellraiser preview issue before the series came out of John Constantine. Back when they were actually still drawing him to look like Sting, which I thought was fantastic. Issue 72, which I have no idea why I couldn't find this forever. And I'm really hoping that this cover, it's a flaming man and a gigantic Swamp Thing head. This is the one cover that just doesn't grab me. I kind of think it looks silly, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the composition or something. Issue 74. So now I've been looking for these forever for a decent price and good shape. So the Swamp Thing, we can put a cap on that. Lone Wolf and Cub, number 11. I couldn't believe I found these. I'm always trying to complete this First Comics Lone Wolf and Cub. Number 11 has a Frank Miller cover on it. This is fantastic stuff. This is like my third or fourth issue of this Mike Ploog cover. Mike Ploog came in and did covers for, I don't know, maybe the last year of the series. And number 16. Now, these were a little bit pricey. They had 3 or 4 issues I want. I've got to decide if I want to lay down that money there, because I can usually find them in dollar boxes slowly over the years. So that was like a fantastic haul at that comic book shop, because it was like I got to do more of what I saw and lay hands on was more amazing than what I actually got. So I was picking and choosing with a limited amount of time that I had. I wished I had all day. JLS Comics is here. What was on Broad Street near the Sam Ash store? I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. It's not registering with me, Scott. Sorry, man. Gretzky is here. What we got here? Oh, yeah, I think I've seen this. Gore Vidal. Mage was enchanting. The colors in the comic were fantastic. Sam Keith was doing the inks, I think. Lone Wolf and Cub. Beautiful, tragic stories. Love them. Absolutely love them. So I'm probably going to... What did I get here? So I think I hit an Ollie's, and yeah, I hit an Ollie's in a comic book shop, another one, but it was real quick. But I'm going to have to get my list updated because I have all the issues of Planetary, one shots, whatever, guest appearances, everything like that, Planetary. And my goal is to get a second set of the proper Planetary series and send it off to have a bound edition. I have a Jack Kirby Captain Universe and the Galactic Rangers that I want to do that with, get bound. And Planetary, yes, there's out of print omnibus, there's trades and things like that, but I think I want a Planetary all in one place, bound, something unique that I would enjoy. So what I did is I found all of these, and I got a good deal on all these. These were in dollar boxes. It blows my mind when I find Planetary in dollar boxes. Anyway, they all deserve a home. All right. Everyone to me is a classic, I guess. But anyway, so I didn't have my list of the second set I'm building. I know I'm close, so I just went ahead and I will buy number 7 all day long, because it cracks me up how Warren Ellis tries to take a shot at Vertigo. It's the only thing that I think fell flat at the end, but it's still cool. I have the quotes here, Galactus story, where where our Planetary team ends up on basically the galaxy-sized ship of a Galactus-like figure, and it turns out that he has died. And some great things are going on this ship. I mean, it's one of my favorite issues. The Gun Club. I know people that this is the only issue of Planetary they talk about. They absolutely loved issue 18 over the years. I got my Morningstar special. This is the one Bill Willingham has wrote and drew that I thought he did Fathom back then. And I know a lot of people don't read Elementals, you know who they are, or whatever. I know a lot of people aren't interested in today's world, but honestly, this could have been just an issue of Elementals. I'm not sure why she got her own special. I'd love to hear the story. I stopped at an Ollie's and I got one of my favorite stories of Superman of all time that I would like to do a review of all time. I have all but one issue, but it was the early 90s Panic in the Sky, which was like this could have been, this is sort of this it ran through each issue of Superman, and it was like its own little mini crossover, a little crisis event, Panic in the Sky. And this storyline was actually used as an Easter egg in the Paul Dini, Bruce Timm Batman cartoon world, if you will, of Justice League. There's an episode called Panic in the Sky that gave you a wink and a nod that Brainiac was about to come back. He was the real villain, because he's the villain in this one, even though it's a different Brainiac than we know of. Panic in the Sky was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So the Johnny Quest book, again, this is niche stuff. I know people may not be super interested or anything like that, but the Johnny Quest book, if you like Johnny Quest, is fantastic. I don't push the book on people. I'm not trying to make people like Johnny Quest. You either like Johnny Quest or you don't. I figured if you did, you would know by now, right? But he had a 31 issue series. Well, I mean, there was a little mini series before that Doug Wildley, the creator of Johnny Quest, took a few episodes of the cartoon and expanded on them, if you will, in the book. And then we got a proper Kamiko series that lasted 31 issues. Dave Stevens covers, Sienkiewicz covers, Steve Rude. A lot of great people came on those books. But for some reason, issue 30 and 31, the last two are just hard to find. And I have that verified with other collectors. They have problems finding them too. So imagine my surprise when I went through some dollar bins, put my stuff in the car, ran back in because it was starting to rain. And I go through a box that's unlabeled underneath those that I hadn't seen. And I find issue 30. I now just need one. And this one is probably hard to find because it says Johnny Quest Classic. Well, that's what that original miniseries was that Doug Wily worked on. But Mark Wheatley and I think Messner Loebs or somebody came in and they redid the episode of the Energy Monster, if you know your Johnny Quest. So I think that might have something to do with this one is hard to find. This is my favorite cover of Animal Man. And actually, I can show you this. In high school, when this came out, this great Brian Bolden cover, I didn't have this issue. I had the comic scene where they did an article on Tom Veitch talking about trying to follow up on Grant Morrison on Animal Man. The way he ended the book, it's like, where do you go from this? And this is an image they had in the book. So let me show you some art I did if it'll show up. It's so faded, I'll be amazed if it shows up on camera. So just to get size comparison, so you know I didn't trace back then, but this is probably my junior year, senior year in high school. I took that image. Give me a minute here. Well, if you want to know what high school was, that was my interpretation of high school at the time. Hated high school, hated school. I was so glad to be out. So I took that image and I drew and mixed it with one of my favorite things. All right. So, oh, it's actually going to show up. You see the rooster. All right. I drew the rooster as best I could. That Mike Byron Bolden did it. And then you go down here to a hatched egg. Do you know who that is? That's Stimpy. That's how my mind worked. I might have that dated. No, but it's probably like 1990, 91, 1990. They were hot. And I'm very proud of that piece. Oh, Mastodon here. JLS Comics, it's Planetary, but I'll go ahead and tell you I also have some Planetary comics. I still have those. What is Sam Keith up to these days? Miss seeing his work on the regular. I'm hoping that he finally finished that Batman Max crossover that he was doing. I'm going to have to go through my books and see if it came in my last shipment. Comic Crack is here. Good morning, sir. All right, Don is here. Great. Okay. So these are the books I got for 50 cents. Oh, no, wait, but I got a few more things here, right? So I have issue 31. Now, if you guys watch this on the rewind and you hear what I had to say about comics being a little bit uninteresting and that sexuality is just part of a story, part of a character, there's other ways that stories are interesting for you guys popping in here. I think it's a very interesting, maybe 5 or 10 minute talk. I don't know how long I went on a rant. But this issue 31 of Legion of Superheroes, I haven't been able to find. I just need issue 37 and I might have the complete set that I want, right? But issue 31 is an interesting take because this is 1992. And for years in the book, hang with me, Element Lad, right, had a relationship with Schwan, who's with the Science Police, right? And it's very cool. Well, as you're reading this issue, they're having problems and they're upset. It's a very well written issue, right? I'm not going to tell you to recommend it to go out and get it. You got to have context for the Legion to enjoy it, I think. But anyway, it's this is 5 years later, Legion, where they're all adults and stuff. So their relationship was like, back 5 years ago. I'm not real clear if they were still together. But she's like real upset and she's talking about a medication and how and he's like, I'm still going to be here for you. And she's like, you need to go and all this stuff, right? Well, it turns out Siobhan had chosen to become a woman. The real, I don't want to say real name, but in this context of the story, her real name is Sean. And she tells him, call me Sean now, not Siobhan. And she stops taking the medication and she reverts back to her original gender as male. Now, after that big rant that I wouldn't call it a rant, I was very, after that talk I had at the beginning of it, this proves exactly what I'm talking about, how things were diverse. And there were many things before in comics that were there, and were acknowledged and they were handled so much better. The story was presented to you. I would put this story right up beside Neil Gaiman's Wanda story in A Game of You, a little bit. But yeah, it's very well handled and a little bit cheesy on the romance, but it's the Legion of Superheroes and it's in the future. Very, very interesting story. I'm glad I finally got to read it. I more scanned it because of time, where I was traveling and everything like that, but I definitely going to put this on the top of the stack. Very interesting story. Then I was excited to find this, The Shadow by Mike Kaluta, first of 4 issues. And what I love about this is that we have great Mike Kaluta artwork, and a lot of this is told in prose. We get some great artwork of the Shadow. And like I said, a little bit of the introduction is told in prose, and then it turns into a regular comic book. And it has this fantastic, I've seen this image so many times before, and I'm so glad that I finally have the pinup. Classic stuff. And for you guys that don't know, Kaluta worked on the Shadow back in the 70s when DC had it. That's why it's a big deal that he's at Dark Horse in the 90s doing it. Okay. I always pick these up. I love Alex Ross's work. I always want readers' copies and stuff, but this is his Universe X sketchbook. It says Omnibus, but it's him working out the characters for presentation throughout the book. I always love seeing his raw pencils. I think we all know what that is. Hepcats number 0. I'm trying to collect Martin Wagner's Hepcats. If you were there, this is a slice of life book where it's got very mature themes with cute little animal heads on it and stuff, right? It has sex and money and people running through the streets of cities and things like that. Very, very cool book. I hate that there's just so few of them. I don't know. I grabbed this on a whim. 1991 Harvey Comics Monster in My Pocket. And I got it just because I love those Universal monsters. And it just caught my eye. You got Medusa. It's got a Frankenstein, a Dracula. I don't know if this is based on a toy line. I really don't care. I just thought it was kind of cool to see something from Harvey with some monsters in it. Again, like I said, doing some filler. I got issue 13 and 14 of Justice League Europe, which I have no idea why it's not in my collection because I bought them off the rack. And then I got a lot of Warren Ellis Excalibur. I'm going to go ahead and finish that up. I'm trying to finish up his Doom 2099, and I'm finishing up his Excalibur. So, yeah, I got quite a bit of that. I ended up double dipping a little bit at two different places. But basically, I put this on the top of the stack because Days of Future Tense, apparently, when Days of Future Past was going on, Warren Ellis has decided to show us what was going on in England. And of course, he had to say that things were worse in England than they were in America during the Days of Future Past, the future there where the Sentinels had killed all the X-Men. Pretty much, that classic story. So yeah, he had to one up. So yeah, just a bunch of those. I mean, I don't think there's a lot to see here unless you're into Warren Ellis and 90s Excalibur and stuff, right? Came up with some cool concepts though. Some of these really are striking. So I had something interesting happen in the collection. I need to show them again, but I ended up finding something like 40 some issues of the Micronauts Volume 1 for a little bit less than 60 cents a piece. And I don't have issue, I think 7 and 8 or 8 or 9, because that's the big appearance of Captain Universe, first appearance of it. But for a while, I'd had for a couple years, I had the special edition of those issues, right? A reprint in the early 80s, right? When Marvel was doing this stuff with Warlock and Nick Fury and, the Kree Skrull War and stuff like that, you could get reprints of collected, little 2 issues per book. So I couldn't find this in my collection. And what's funny is that this book would pop up whenever I would go digging. It was the it was the wooden nickel that would keep popping up and everything, right? So I decided that I was not going to dig through all my boxes. And as soon as I found one, I was going to buy it again. And I found it a week later for like 50 cents. All right. Now, I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of continuity comics. We know we lost Neil Adams just a week and a half before George. But I happened to run across these, a bunch of his 80s, early 90s continuity comic books, and they're a story on their own. But I am going to tell a story about one issue here. I love Neil Adams drawing monsters and werewolves and stuff, right? So good. A little bit of a Mike Golden cover on Armor. If you can make it out, it's you got to study it. We had a glow-in-the-dark cover of Cyber Rad, who's trying to accept that he's a robot and his flesh has come on. We can see the gears. But this is the one, okay? Around 1993, I was 20 years old, and I was living with a girl who had come back up here. She moved to Texas when she was like 12 or 13 and come back up here. And we ended up like living together for less than a year or whatever, right? But she was watching QVC. I know it was QVC, right? If you don't remember QVC, it was a shopping network. I have no idea if it's still around, but you were able to call in as they had people, some hosts and stuff sitting there showing you items and jewelry and whatever that they were going to sell. Now, what was funny is a few years before that, I saw Doug Munch on there when my mom was watching it when I was in high school. And Doug Munch showed up wearing a hoodie, and he had his hair parted down the middle and his glasses. And it was, it looked like a hippie still holding on to the dream there, right? And it was my first clue that maybe they don't make that much money in comics. And I'm not being mean. It was just shocking to see him show up wearing a hoodie, on QVC on national television. I remember what they were pushing. But anyway, now I'm 20 years old. It's a few years later. She's watching QVC. I'm waiting on Mystery Science Theater to come on. And all of a sudden I see Neil Adams there, and he's pushing his continuity books because of Death Watch 2000 that's coming. Their big crossover. And Neil was cracking me up because like he was being Neil on TV, Neil Adams, and he's really pushing this book. And he was acting like, all charming and thought he was the funniest thing in the room. And the lady was trying to be professional, but he was freaking her out. So he shows this cover and he was like, let me tell you something, lady. I make comic books fun. So he showed this cover and I'm like, what the hell did he draw? What kind of face is that? Talking about this right here. But when you turn, so he looked at the lady, and if you see the balloon, it says the guy's laughing like Santa Claus for some reason, right? Anyway, but then he turned it upside down for everybody, and he had to show the woman who's orgasmic saying "woo oh 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 oh." And he was like, "Isn't that great?" And the lady was just looking at him like, "What the hell?" So if you see it, you turn it upside down, it turns into a woman. There's her face. If you don't see it, you know, arms, legs. Yeah, there you go. So when I saw that in the bin, I laughed. I went straight back there. All right, what's up? Okay, so found this issue of Panic, a reprint of the EC series with a great Basil Wolverton cover. It's got art by Joe Orlando, Jack Davis. Ah, oh, I was on a roll there. Severin, John Severin, some other people. Always grab those. Let me get these out of the way. I don't know if you guys were into Exiles in the '90s, but I recommend the first 3 years when Judd Winnick was on it. If you ever watched the TV show Sliders, the Exiles was an unofficial X book by Judd Winnick, where he took some. It was kind of an excuse to bring back some characters, popular characters from Age of Apocalypse. They pulled Blink and I think Sabretooth at the beginning of it to be in Exiles, but they're all recruited by a mysterious being, and they're going to go on missions in the multiverse. So if you're watching Doctor Strange in the Multiverse, you get to jump on a book called Exiles. This one ran for 100 issues, might have had 1 or 2 annuals. And it's out of Marvel. It's in the Marvel universe and continuity, but they're in the other multiverses, right? So they brought back Mimic, a Silver Age redeemed villain, I guess, from the early days of X-Men in the Silver Age, who was able to retain 5 powers of people he came around. So we have that. It had Blink from Age of Apocalypse, Sabretooth, and then it had a little bit of a rotating cast as they went through the multiverse, right? They went to King Hyperion. Judd Winnick left. Chuck Austin came on. Tony Bedard came on. Eventually, Chris Claremont came on. Wendigos played around with the X-Men. They brought back Morph, and this was huge because I was remembering him being Changeling for like half a second in the X-Men books, but the X-Men cartoon of the '90s brought him back proper in an episode or 2, and all of a sudden he pops up in this. And there's Blink from the Age of Apocalypse that was really popular, and they have a little Hyborian Age story there. But I enjoyed Exiles. Everything Judd Winnick did, I thought was gold. Those first 3 years, I think he was on the book, and then it was storyline by storyline. It kind of varied. Some good stuff in there. I laughed when I got this. This was a quarter. I think he just did the cover, but this is X-Force meets Youngblood, Rob Liefeld cover. I got this just because it made me chuckle. I'll be surprised if I ever read this. So, oh my goodness, those '90s. When was this out? 1996. So Stephen Platt did the art, I think. But yeah, that's so funny. So this is the last issue of Adventure Comics before it shrank to digest size for the next year, right? But I get these because the Dial H for Heroes stories are actually interesting, enough for like just simple turn off your brain reading. But they have George Perez covers. And I've been grabbing these when I see them over the last few years. I read a few when I was a kid, but basically you would send in anybody who was a reader, and they went mostly with kids, could send in the idea for a hero, and they would dial, and you could see your hero that you created in a few panels of a comic book, right? And there's one where I think it was Harlan Ellison had sent in one about a snow creature or something. I laughed when I saw that. Anyway, but what's really interesting to this is that I kind of remember this as a kid, but this is the contract when you send in your creation, and the top half is the contract that you sign saying that you are work for hire. You will not be paid for this. We will own this character. We will publish it or not publish it as we see fit. I'm like, man, that's just cold, And now after what we've heard over the, since what we've heard about creator rights and everything that they're talking about, man, that just cracks me up to see that. Oh my gosh. And they say that if you're under 18, get your parents to sign this. I'm like, yeah, ask your parents to sign away your rights to a creation. All right. So here's another issue of Animal I was talking about. I've had this, I've sold it. I've had this, I've sold it, traded it, whatever, gave it away to somebody that liked Animal, that I felt be to a good home. But I think I'll always keep number 27 because this is the issue after Grant Morrison, Grant Morrison's story on Animal Man, his last issue. And like I said, his last issue, I won't spoil it for anybody because it's one of those books I think is required reading for everybody anybody that gets into comics. It ends in a way like, where do you go from there? So I always think I need to be reminded on where they went from there, which was fantastic. I got this just because it's a Brian Boland cover. It's the Outsiders number 16, Halo versus Firefly, but there was just something about this Boland artwork and cover that I just was like, I passed it up last time I was there, and I was like, I should have got that. And so I decided just to get this. This was 50 cents. I was like, why not? But it's a beautiful Boland cover, and it's just obscure and odd enough that like I could actually, in the colors, I could actually see me just hanging this up in a frame or something. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, nothing. Almost have every issue of Valiant's Shadow Man. I think this just ran for 40 or 41 issues. I think I'm down to needing 2 issues, but like with anything, as the book was winding down, before Acclaim was getting ready to take over, if they hadn't already, with anything, the last couple issues are really hard to find. I don't know if they had smaller print runs or anything, but that's a common occurrence. They almost had like the first year and a half of Authority. I bought a few last month, but I found a number 1 like in mint condition. I've already got them, but you just never know. Sometimes a book just needs a home. I got this Monkey Man and O'Brien number 1 by Art Adams back in the day because I have my copy signed, all 3 copy issues of this miniseries signed by Art Adams. But I'm still the guy that even when I do see a signature, I appreciate it, but it still looks like vandalism on a comic to me. I can't help it. A few Vertigo books, Timothy Hunter fan, Names of Magic, part of a miniseries that came out. And then the one that's really hard to find, Life During Wartime, where I think it's a grown-up Timothy Hunter. Just some Vertigo. Going on, got some Legion, no big deal. Wildfire. Then we have Doom Patrol by Grant Morrison, number 54. Yes, I have this. Yes, I've already read this. But issue 51 and 54 are Rebus-centered stories. Negative man, if you will, negative woman merged together with a third entity. Well, it wasn't Negative Woman. They picked a random female character because DC said, no, we have plans for Negative Woman that I don't think ever came to fruition. She might have popped up in Checkmate or who knows what it was. Anyway, I don't know what they did with her. But anyway, but yeah, anytime I see, I mean, this is a great cover. That looks like somebody actually made a figure, I guess, of a Rebus and took a picture of it. I think that's fantastic. So yeah, Rebus stories are just weird enough that I love them. I'm going back and I'm getting this crossover that introduced the Teen Titans. This crossed over with Deathstroke, Teen Titans, and Teen Titans, the Total Chaos story. This is around the time that Marv Wolfman and he admitted it to me. He didn't say specifically at this time, but this is the storyline where in the early 90s hit and this crossover hit and they're bringing in the Teen Titans. Marv Wolfman did tell me years ago at a con when I was talking to him from across the table that he admitted he stayed on the Teen Titans too long. And I think this is when fandom actually was like, you've been on the book too long there. So I got rid of him, but now I'm having that nostalgia for him. Right. And then towards the end of the 2000s, DC sort of knew they were going to be doing the 52, where they're going to reboot everything. And they let a few of their books, they let some people have carte blanche on them, like do whatever you want and stuff, right? So now I'm going to go back and finish up all the Justice League of America issues that James Robinson did. And Mark Bagley did the art on some of this, not because it's the rise of Eclipso, not because that I'm a James Robinson fan and he did Cry for Justice, which led to this team, did some weird stuff, but he had a lot of eclectic heroes in there, a lot of pop-ups, but I'm getting them because he brought in the Shade, I found out. And the Shade ties to Starman, and I will get anything tied to Starman. And ladies and gentlemen, for our last book here, I actually hit an Ollie's up north, and it was the only Ollie's I'd ever seen when I got to the graphic novel collection, the place where you buy your graphic novels and stuff. that I found out that I didn't find out. I walked up and I'd never seen this before, but it was bare. It was bare. Every graphic novel was gone. Everything around was full, but every bookshelf was full. The graphic novel section empty. Uh, but they had one or two of these left, right? This is Master of Comics. I heard about this coming out around 2019, but this is a soft cover. And the one I heard about was going to be a hardcover. I think I saw it when I was pre-ordering books online, and I hated to pass it up because what they do is this person went around to several comic book artists, and they went into their studio and they put in their art and everything. But let me find a good one here because we're going to end this. Oh, here's Mike Kaluta. Since Scott's out there, man, this is for you, brother. You might actually recognize some of this. But anyway, they go in their studio, take pictures. That's Mike Kaluta. There's that image I just showed you of the shadow in his DC Comics book. There's Mike Kaluta working in his studio, and then they interview them and they talk about their process of working and self-discipline, and just do interviews with them. And they show some art. There's more pictures of them. And I'm going to tell you who all is in this book. So, because I'm going to be reading this probably later in the day. This is probably going to be my set down. We have Travis Charest, Frank Cho, Don Johnson, Mike Kaluta, Jean-Paul Leon before he passed away, Dan Panosian, Sean Phillips, Frank Quitely, P. Craig Russell, Tim Sale, Bill Sienkiewicz, Walt Simonson, J.H. Williams III, and I skipped a few of them. So, yeah, you get to see their studio and their art and their thoughts on a few things, which I just think is fantastic. Some people are more organized than others. So, yeah, that's going to be a good read. So, we'll see who's here, and we're going to call it the day. It is Mother's Day. I got to take my wife out to see her mother, and that'll probably be a day for me, and that's it. I'll include the shadow artist. Paolo has popped up. What's up, brother? Comic Cracks here. Everybody's saying hello. Mastodon popped in here. I heard Grant had a recent opinion on a certain Green Lantern show. On the rewind, go back. I speak about it, but I speak about why it's actually boring to even bring this stuff up if you're not going to add things to it to make an interesting topic. So yeah, on the rewind, I might actually try to download this video if I'm able to do that, and probably take out that and post it as a video, or I'm just going to do it as a little 5-10 minute video. Yeah, Kaluta's got tons. Kaluta's awesome, man. And Scott Connor's got stories about Kaluta and Charles Vess. Okay, guys. So thanks for popping in. If you have come in here in the last, I don't know how long, good grief, an hour and 12 minutes. How long did I talk? Anyway, go back to the beginning on the rewind, hear what I had to say about Grant Morrison, Green Lantern. I'm probably going to change the title of this now that I know what I've talked about. And I do a little talk about, James O'Barr's The Crow, why it's so much more interesting than a lot of stuff going on today. I felt good. It was very cathartic when I did that. Go back on the thumb this up and sub if you're not subbed. It seems like when I get the thumbs up is actually helping the video get a few more views. I'm not looking to be huge, but it's kind of cool that people know that there's somebody out here still, talking about comics 95% of the time. So anyway, but yeah, go back and watch the show from last night where we kind of paid tribute to George Perez, showing art, showing books we had, a little bit of talk. A lot of people came in towards the end, and you got a lot of conversation going there for a while. It was a good time, very cathartic. All right, you guys have an awesome day, and be excellent to each other. Later.